What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video in our Welfare vs. Wealth series. If you are not familiar with this series, we go around all of RuneScape testing out different monsters and bosses with different tiered setups to see which setup is the most worth it. I tend to do 3 to 4 setups, and they range from a Welfare setup, which is typically the cheapest possible option to do the monster or boss, and then normally I do 1 or 2 medium setups with upgrades for each setup that are mid-gear / mid-account, and then a wealthy setup that is typically an end game type setup. We've already tested quite a few monsters and bosses, so if you are interested in those, go ahead and click the links in the description. Today, we will be at the Demonic Gorillas and we will be using 4 setups. Our setups will vary quite a bit, so there isn't one specific weapon we will be upgrading, but my friend Purple Fox did help me out again in game and let me borrow a twisted bow, so we will be testing out a setup that is worth over 1 bill towards the end of this video, so shout out to Purple Fox. Keep in mind, I will go over the cost of each setup during the video, show you how I kill the Demonic Gorillas, and then show you the loot from 1 hour from each setup. Then, at the end of the video, I will do some calculations and explain which setup I think is the most worth it. Also, I will not be basing the money per hour on the loot from each hour. I will be basing the money per hour on the amount of kills per hour based off of the total loot from every setup and the total loot per kill. Additionally, just know that I am by no means a professional demonic gorilla killer, so my average kills per trip really varied, but just know I was nowhere near the most proficient players who average around 20 to 30 plus kills a trip, so my kills per hour may be lower than others, but the results will still prove to be valuable and important. Now I will show you my account stats, but before that happens, if you are enjoying these types of videos, go ahead and leave a like, and also consider subscribing if you want to continue to see my content. We are almost at 6k subs, so thank you guys so much for that. My account has 96 attack, 99 strength, 93 defense, 95 range, 70 prayer, 86 magic, and 99 hit points. I did actually get a magic level and a range level during this video, so at some points I had 94 range and 85 magic, but I will explain why I got a magic level later on. Now, let's get started, starting with the welfare setup. When doing the demonic gorillas, you need to have a melee setup and a range switch, so each tier will have melee and ranged gear. For the welfare option, I decided to use the Helm of Nadasnot, the Fire Cape, the Amulet of Glory, 500 rune arrows, but I will calculate afterwards how many I used for the final calculation. I am also using the arc light, and I will be using that for every setup. I'm going to pause the welfare setup real quick because I did not realize how many ancient shards I would need to do this video. I did have to kill Tiësto twice to get shards, and also I had to burst a ton of necroils for many hours to get more shards because I messed up filming an entire hour with one of these setups and wasted 3 shards, so this is just a quick rant and complaint from me on how much I had to grind to create this video that I was unaware I would have to do. Anyways, I'm using the arc light for each setup because it absolutely destroys the demonic gorillas, but keep in mind you will need 3 ancient shards to create this weapon from a dark light, and you will have to charge it every 3 or so hours. I am also using a black d'hide body and chaps, the dragon defender, Barrows gloves, the rune boots, and the ring of dueling to teleport to the Ferox enclave to restore stats and bank. In the inventory, I have my range switch, which is my Ava's accumulator and magic shortbow imbued, which I think is actually a better option than a rune crossbow. I also have a super strength and super attack potion, 1 ranging potion, 4 prayer potions, a royal seed pod to teleport there, and then monkfish. Keep in mind, I will calculate at the very end how much a total hour cost with supplies for each setup, and I will include it in the cost, but for the initial cost, it'll only include this one inventory because I cannot predict how many inventories and supplies I will use. This welfare setup costs a total of 500 KGP, which is really cheap considering how much money could be made from 1 Zenyte drop, and honestly, I found this welfare setup to not be completely terrible when using it, but obviously the kills were pretty slow, and I had a pretty low damage output. If you are more proficient at demonic gorillas, you would typically bring more prayer potions because your prayer switches will be better, but I'm about average, so this was the best setup for me. I will briefly explain how to get there if you do not know. Use your royal seed pod, and you will be at the gnome stronghold. You then exit the doors and run to the northwest towards the gate entrance and the gravestone that tells you how many total demonic gorilla kills you have. Continue to run north through the Fiery Valley area and then enter the cave at the very end. Then run north, protecting from magic and ranged, and then you will be at the demonic gorillas, and after each trip, just teleport out to a place to restore stats and bank. And keep in mind, this is always how I got here, and it is the fastest way to do it. After the hour was over, I took all of the loot out and went to price check it in Castle Wars. With the welfare setup, we managed to make make 485 kgp and got 31 kills in the hour, which to me is pretty good considering the setup. Again, remember the final money per hour will be based off of the loot per kill and also after the supplies are put in, not just based off of this one trip. Now time for the first of two medium setups, the medium A setup. With the medium A setup, I have upgraded to the Virax plate skirt for some extra defensive bonuses and prayer bonuses, and I have also upgraded to the dragon boots. The inventory now sees the biggest upgrade, which is the blowpipe, which will definitely speed our kills up and increase our damage output. It also allows me to use the prayer blessing, which boosts our prayer as well. I know I'm using 5 prayer pots, but again, if you are more proficient, you could use between 6 to 8 a trip. And finally, I upgraded from monkfish to sharks to prolong our trips, and we now see a super combat potion instead. This medium A setup cost 5.5 mil GP, which seems like quite a bit more, but really that cost is mostly from the blowpipe upgrade, which is typically the first item you want to have when doing demonic gorillas, and an item you want to buy eventually to use. I found that with the medium setup, my kills were faster, and also I did manage to get 3 unique items literally back to back to back, all of which are between 1 in 500 and 1 in 750 drop rate, and the fact that it was 3 of them back to back, that is some crazy odds and crazy RNG. I definitely wish it would have been the 14 million Zanite shard instead, which is a 1 in 300 drop rate. After the hour was up, the total loot we got was 713 kgp, and our kills per hour went up to 39 in the 1 hour, which is a considerable upgrade from the welfare setup, and the blowpipe definitely had a lot to do with that. Now with the medium B setup, we see some pretty major upgrades, and this is a more typical setup you will see mid to high level accounts using at the demonic gorillas. We have now upgraded to the Amulet of Fury for some defensive bonuses, the Guthix D'hide body for more prayer bonuses, the Berserker Ring imbued to get more damage output, and then in the inventory we see slight upgrades to divine potions and a major upgrade to the Saradomin Godsword, which is the best spec weapon, as the spec heals you and restores prayer depending on what you hit, and also we upgraded to 1 anglerfish to kind of negate the damage taken from the divine potions, and also mana raise for food, and we will now be using our player owned house as a way to restore our stats and bank. The total cost of this setup is 51 mil GP, which is again a huge jump in money, but the majority of this comes from the Saradomin Godsword, which is worth 40 mil GP. I found that with this setup, I could last longer on my trips if my prayer flicking was good, because my prayer definitely lasted a lot longer with the minor increases, and the Saradomin Godsword definitely helped me as well, but honestly, the spec didn't hit that much, so that was a little disappointing. After the hour was up, the total loot came out to 1.58 mil GP, and our total kills went up to 41 in the hour. I believe that a more proficient player would have seen a greater jump in kills in the hour, maybe closer to 45 kills, but this was still a couple kills more than the previous setup. Now time for the wealthy setup, the Mac Daddy of these setups. We have a ton of upgrades here, and we upgraded to the Bando's chestplate and tassets, as well as the primordial boots and the amulet of torture. In the inventory, our range switch got a little more complex and did increase quite a lot in price. We now have the twisted bow, which is worth over 1 bill, with the amethyst arrows as well, the armadillo body and the necklace of anguish, and an additional anglerfish, and now 6 prayer potions. I did actually try this setup a couple different ways, one of which had more switches to see if it was better, but it didn't improve at all and was a little too much for me. So if you are more advanced, you can use more switches and even bring high elk runes to make your trips last longer. I still decided to do this setup, and this wealthy setup cost a grand total of 1,391,000,000 GP, which is obviously a major upgrade in gear and cost from the previous setup, but this is kind of the endgame gear you would use here, and the T-bow alone cost over 1 bill. I found that with this setup, the kills were much faster, and the T-bow caused an increase in damage output, but it was slower than the toxic blowpipe, so that's something to consider. After the hour was up, I got all of the loot, and it came out to 1,093,000 GP, and we managed to get 45 kills in the hour. Now again, please don't roast me for this. I am not a professional demonic gorilla killer, so people who are better at prayer switching would probably manage to get quite a few more kills per hour with this setup, but this is still super helpful to the calculations. Now time for the calculations and my opinion on which setup I think is the most worth it. After factoring in the cost of supplies, the cost of each setup has changed. They now include the initial cost of the gear and the inventory, as well as the additional supplies used in the hour. The welfare setup now costs 633 kgp, and we got 31 kills in the hour. The medium A setup now costs 5.9 mil GP, and we got 39 kills in the hour. The medium B setup now costs 51.4 mil GP, and we got 41 kills in the hour. Finally, the wealthy setup now costs 1,391,300,000 GP, and we got 45 kills in the hour. If we add up all of the kills, which is 156, and all of the loot, which is around 3,870,000 GP. That means a demonic gorilla kill is worth 24,800 GP. Keep in mind, we did not get a Zanite shard, which would dramatically increase your GP per hour, so it is almost better that we did not get one, as our GP per hour will now be much more accurate to a real trip. After factoring in the cost of supplies for potions, food, etc. for each setup, the amount of GP per hour for the welfare setup is 636 KGP, the GP per hour for the medium A setup is 567 KGP, the medium B setup is 587 KGP an hour, and finally the wealthy setup is 816 KGP an hour. Now, based off of these results, I am honestly pretty shocked that the welfare setup made more money per hour compared to the two medium setups, but this is because the other two setups used more prayer potions, better potions, and used the blowpipe, which cost considerably more per hour. However, it would still be better to use the two medium setups over the welfare setup because the money per hour will drastically increase after receiving the 1 in 300 drop rate Zanite shard, which is worth 14 million GP, and the medium setups average quite a bit more kills per hour, so ultimately that is the goal of killing demonic gorillas. You want to get the most kills per hour. I think the best bang for your buck would be the medium A setup, as it is under 6 million GP to use, and you still make almost 600k GP an hour, and the next setup costs way more, and you only make 20k more GP an hour. The wealthy setup would obviously be the best setup by far, because you don't have to use scales or darts with the blowpipe, and you average more kills per hour, but for the cost, the two medium setups are better. I would probably say the medium A setup is the best profit to cost setup, and the medium B setup is the best setup overall due to being just over 50 mil and still averaging a good amount of kills per hour. Obviously, if money is super tight, use the welfare setup, and if money is not an issue, use the wealthy setup. I really hope you guys did enjoy this video, and if you did, please leave a like to let me know and also help out the channel. Additionally, I have been considering making an ultimate noobs guide on demonic gorillas, so if you want to see that, let me know in the comments section and I will make that happen. If you guys have been enjoying my content and want to see more, go ahead and consider subscribing. We will likely pass 6k subs any day now, so again, thank you so much to you guys. We have gained around 1k subs this month, which is absolutely bonkers. If you guys have any suggestions for another welfare vs. wealth video, let me know, and as always, if you want to talk in game, join my clan chat Hartblitz, and also join the Discord in the description. I really want the CC to be poppin', so we're looking for more active players that want to talk in game more, and even do some PVM stuff together. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for my next video.